Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. I'm Nils Smith, and I'm joined by my good friend, a man that I love and admire and respect tremendously, Alejandro Reyes. Alejandro, thanks for joining us.
Man, so pumped. So we're just having a conversation about the social medias in the church, bro. Like, and there's not a lot of people that I'd rather be talking to. You were actually one of the first people, Nils. Was you and Sean when I started looking like, man, I love business, but I actually have always loved ministry. I actually thought I was going to be a pastor, went to Bible school, and realized shortly after that I wasn't. And when I started looking to help the church, you were the first guy I saw. And then I saw Sean. We're all friends, and you've been killing it. Just got to give you a shout out because the people that are listening right now, you guys are listening to one of the best, if not the best, when it comes to social media in the church. And not just a smart guy and knows a couple things, read a few blogs, but is actually doing it at a very high level. So I just have to brag on you real quick, bro.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. It's that means a ton coming from you, and it's been fun to learn from each other through the years. And I think so many people don't understand like the conversations that are had behind the scenes and the learning. And I think one of these I love in this space is how just people, we work together, and it's been cool to see. And there's so much work to be done in this conversation. And it's been fun to guide this conversation alongside you through the years. Alejandro, for those that aren't aware of you, you've worn a lot of hats through the years, and you do a lot of different things even today. How do you describe yourself professionally? How should church leaders see you and what you do?
Yeah, man, if I think of identity, it's always weird thinking that as someone that grew up with like kind of a warped identity. But the most simplest thing I could think about is I'm a husband and a dad that just so happens to love business a lot. I run an agency, and I love the local church. I have volunteered at churches for 20 years, never been on staff. Came to Tri-Cities, Washington area, and volunteered for 2 years. Never ever thought I'd be on a church staff. And back in October 2019, November-ish, my pastor asked me to come on to be an executive pastor. And so I was like, what the heck? Like, man, like people are going to leave your church if they hear I'm an executive pastor. And so I help out 1.5 days a week. And so those are the few hats that I wear, man. I like to think of it like 100% business dude, 100% ministry dude.
Yes. And I think there's so many different things in it. And I remember when I first met you or found you, I didn't know you were a Christian. You were you were doing so much in the social media space, helping influencers like 10 years ago, early days, and always doing so many interesting things. And then I loved too when you joined the PushPay team, and really that's where I feel like you and I connected deeply. Yep. Where I felt like it kind of took the baton of running with the lead voice into churches in that season, and have continued and continue to model it through your agency. We are approaching Christmas, and Christmas is, I think we often describe it as the SuperBowl, Christmas and Easter in the church space. And we're facing an unknown of what Christmas will look like in this season. Alejandro, you've had some really unique strategies for face-to-face gatherings and how digital and physical have worked. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you've done, and then I want to dig into like, what do you see for this year as churches start planning ahead?
No, that's really good. And this is what I told you right before this. I'm a OneTrick Pony, and where a lot of people are just tacticians, and every new platform that comes out, they're just tacticians. I'm not wired that way. Like if I have questions about TikTok or new things in Reels, I'm probably asking someone like Nils or Jason Caston, our friend, right? Like you guys are technologists and also great business dudes. I feel like, I've limped on and been a slow growth to becoming more of a strategic type guy because of it's funny, our pain a lot of times turns into part of purpose in our life. When I was 11, man, I went to counseling from 10 to like 11, 12 because of some just mess in my home. And I wouldn't talk to the counselor. I've never actually shared this, Nils. I went to the counselor and I wouldn't talk. And so 3 or 4 weeks. And so the counselor's like, hey, what do you want to learn? I said, I want to know what you know. I was 11 years old. I want to know what you know. He's like, what do you mean? I want to know about the human brain. I want to know about what makes people do what they do. And the context was there, like what would make my stepfather ruin our home? And I started to learn, man, at 11 years old about human behavior psychology. And I studied that through high school, and I really studied that. And so that's what when I think of it, I think of how do I learn about human behavior and psychology, not so that I can manipulate. Manipulation says I'm going to persuade you to do what's best for me. I'm gonna trick you to do what's best for me.
Yeah.
Influence and persuasion says I'm going to actually persuade you and do my best to get you to do what's best for you.
Yeah, that's good.
I persuade and brainwash my girls. When I wanted my girls to read books,
yep.
I just started talking about, man, did you know the smartest people in the world, they read books? I'd read in front of them. It got to the point when they were younger where they were timeout. They couldn't read a book. So I'm fascinated, bro, about with psychology, and I apply that to business. And as it pertains to how to market everything, it's kind of really a brain in human psychology. When we see something, when our brain sees something when our brain sees advertising, we check out. And the problem is, Nils, that 99.9% of churches, all they're doing on their social media is advertising. They're 100%. Promoting.
Yes.
Hey, come this Sunday. Hey, Easter's going to be amazing. Yep. Check it out. And that may work for your current audience, but I'm going to say something that is actually a good thing. Your biggest potential audience, one, may not even know who you are, and they definitely don't go to your church. We have a church here in Tri-Cities, about 1,000 people. Well, there's 300,000 plus people here. So the biggest audience. And so if we're just promoting, yeah, we're going to talk to our core audience, but what about our mission and reaching the lost for our church context? Man, like just promoting, they don't even know who you are. So Nils, I think of it like being blindfolded. Most churches are being blindfolded across, the basketball court, trying to make a shot on the other end of the court. And that's how most churches are marketing. I'm going to blindfold and I'm going to, pin the tail on a donkey and then like you pin it on his nose. And what smart churches are doing, I think of it like golf. Like imagine you're right there at the putt, you're about to putt 3 inches and you're just tapping. Anybody can hit that shot. And so that's what smart churches are doing. They're figuring out a way to communicate and making it as easy as possible to invite someone to church. And the way that we've done that is through content. If you look at anybody that we look up to, Nils, like, authors, speakers, communicators, the one thing in common that they've all done is created content. And content is the thing that I think builds trust fastest. And so what we do is we put content in front of churches or in front of the local community, local city. We put sermons, we put, quotes, we put episodic type, maybe produced type videos in front of people in our city. And then we advertise to that content. And instead of just promoting content that sells or content that gets people to come, we predominantly put mostly free, good, value-driven content. And now when someone sees our advertisement for Easter or Christmas, a big event, all that stuff, they actually know who you are because there's a part of our brain, Nils, that when we see something I mentioned earlier, it's a defense mechanism. But if you think of the Trojan horse that was designed to give a gift, to give a level of value, and they snuck through the gates. That's a lot like our brains, where if we can give people content, it feels less threatening to the crocodile brain.
Yes. And I think I see where this aligns to persuasion of you're building trust along the way too, through this 100%. Content of instead of that just going straight for the sell. You're
and this with a lot of the stuff that you're doing. You do the same thing. You put tons of content. You got a podcast like this, but why aren't churches doing it, Nils? I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, it's just we've never had to do it. I think churches could just put a billboard at a sign out in front of their building, and people came, and or a little pay $50 a year for your Yellow Pages ad, and people showed up. As long as it was a little bigger than the other church's Yellow Page ad, you were good. And so I think that we're in a different age now, in a different moment, in a different time where, before I go to a restaurant, I'm going to go check them out online, but if I've already been like seeing their social media connections, or if I've seen a friend share about a restaurant, I'm going to be much more likely than to just randomly Google search restaurants in New York City. And so I think it is that content that creates that initial connection, which then leads to whatever that conversion step is. But I think it's a process. But I think at the end of the day, Alejandro, it's hard work. And I think sometimes we want the easy way, and people are looking for what's the silver bullet, what's the quick fix to this, and there's no quick fix that I'm aware of on social media, and I've been doing this, and you and I have both been doing this for a long time. So if you find it, let me know.
I there's definitely not, and you're right, it's work. There's a in Ezekiel says he sat where they sat, and it's very, very similar to this idea that I'm talking about. Is very similar to Jesus's model, if you will. He literally communicated right where people are, and the paying for Yellow Pages, which wasn't cheap. If you want to do a little bit of advertising, let's just be honest, you sat back and just waited. But this is actually a very biblical approach to going where people are and meeting their needs and communicating to them. Jesus didn't go like, talk to the woman at the well, like, hey, we got this party going on at someone's house. It's going to be dope. You should come check it out. No, he met the need. And and especially right now, Neil's like, domestic violence is up, suicide is up, depression, loneliness, and pornography, so many things that are happening right now. And all we want to talk about is the gospel and Jesus. And I get that. But why not, one thing I love that Haley's doing at Bayside is they're talking about parenting in a pandemic. Well, that's very relevant right now, because as a parent, I got kids in the next 2 rooms right now, and I would love some help. And so I think the local church fully realize isn't just, let me say this, is preaching the gospel, not preaching the gospel, right? Like through parenting in the pandemic, and how to make community, and how to use Zoom to hang out with your friends, and, just becoming the best possible resource in your city. And that would be the closest to me, Nils, of a magic bullet. Is I want to build trust with people so that if we're a good fit for them, they come, and letting God do the rest.
So one of the things I hear, Alejandro, is a lot of people have listened and will say, I went to your session at the conference, and I got on social media for a week, and nobody looked at anything I posted. What's your response? Like at the end of the day, like just because you put a video out, or you put a scripture quote out, doesn't mean anybody's going to engage with it. How long does it take? Like what's the process there?
Yeah, me and Nils tomorrow we're going to the gym, and in a week we're going to take off our shirts online. Like that just doesn't work, yes. Right? Yes. It like, we think of social media as this like you said, magic bullet, like it's going to solve all of our problems. Imagine you, pastor or church leader, when you first wanted to start communicating, most of us weren't naturally gifted. Maybe we thought we were, but it took time, and it takes a baby 9 months to come. That's the way of life, is process. You have to trust the process. And so for those that are kind of like, man, well, we have Christmas coming up ASAP. The one way that you can speed it up, and it doesn't take a lot of effort and a lot of budget, is through ads. Facebook and Instagram owns Facebook, and you can run ads. Now, I'm not telling you to go in the ads manager and all that stuff. There's a little boost button right under your post on your Facebook page. You could boost something for $5 or $10, and that can speed up the process of building trust. Why? Because you can get in front of more people. Another reason that ads are really important is because engagement is so low right now, especially on Facebook. So that's that's what I would say, that it's a process. You got to, and think of it just like processes, like baking a cake. You have to not only follow a recipe and get that right, measurements and all that, but it also takes time to, in the oven at a certain temperature and a certain amount of minutes. And so you have to think of social media like a cake, like recipe, like a process. And if you think that way and think long-term, like, yes, we're going to do well on Easter, but man, these strategies that Nils and Alejandro are talking about, not only going to help with this Christmas, but man, it's going to set up Easter for sure even better. And so what I would say a metric is, go all in. If you're just kind of playing around, go all in until Easter. I think now today is a great time to set up Easter. Then come back and complain to Nils, not me. But I promise you,
Yes.
if you listen to more of
Yes.
these podcasts and the guests that Nils have and implement these, you're going to see some results.
I think the biggest takeaway that I hope pastors will hear just from that right there is that consistency is the key. Now, I think a lot of times I hear pastors say, well, I need to get it right. I need to be good enough before I can get on. And I've heard I think Sean shared that it takes 100 times of making a video till you're comfortable being on camera. That doesn't mean you're good on camera. That's when you hit comfort level. And so you gotta just push it out. You gotta start going, and you're gonna get better, and you're gonna find an audience, and you're going to build that following, and it's going to convert, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take consistency. And then you got to get better. You don't just do the same, put it on an assembly line and go, but you got to keep, really building it. So it's, when people are listening to this, it's probably mid-November, early November. We're getting ready for Christmas. How does a church get, what would be their strategy in November posting content that's going to get people to show up in December?
Yeah, no, I think, pastors spend 10 to 20 hours, some of them even more, preparing for their sermon every week, just so that they can preach it one time and it stays within those four walls. And hopefully you've been forced, because of the pandemic, to go to do more online, like our church of 1,000. We've literally had to redo so many staff titles and hiring and shifts, and people are doing new things to make this pandemic kind of church happen. And so what I would say is two types of content. One is, the Sunday snippets, like just take snippets of your pastor communicating for 2 or 3 minutes on a topic, on something, from his service. Then you can, take quotes in scripture and post those. And then, you could probably have, my pastor loves to cook. So what if he was talking about, how to be an amazing dad over grilling some steak and using that as a metaphor? One side note is Bayside. They had 55,000 people for their Easter unique devices on their website, not including social media or anything like that. 55,000 unique devices on their Easter programs. It's actually dwindled down to recently, it was like 5,000 or 6,000 people over the last couple Sundays. But giving has gone up, Nils, and the reason it's gone up is because they're doing this kind of episodic type content. They're doing podcasts like this. One of their pastors is good at fishing, and so he fishes and talks. And so it's like kind of like, we don't go to social media to look a lot of times for church content. We actually look for on-demand type stuff, entertaining stuff that we like Netflix. And so the second type of content outside of church content would be like, what is your pastor good at? What is the worship pastor good at? And just get them talking and serving their community.
Yes. Well, and I think people like to connect with people. And so often we want to promote the organization of the church, but people want to connect with the congregation that is the church. And often they want to connect with the leader of the church too. And so the pastor, the worship pastor, the youth pastor, those people that they see on the platform, if they can build a personal relationship with them before they begin to kind of sit under their teaching, there's going to be a much greater level of trust. And naturally, somebody that doesn't go to church that's into fishing is going to see this guy that's into fishing and create a relational connection. And so I think that's so smart, Alejandro, where I think we've often thought that the church, we just have one piece of content. music and a message, and that's it. And I think there's so much more opportunity if we, get creative with it.
Yeah,
I've seen you personally do this even with your family a little bit. What was some of your learnings as you kind of engaged on YouTube specifically with other content, unique content?
Yeah, YouTube is fantastic. A lot of people, I'm seeing some stats with so we had a YouTube channel, and for our context, we had 35,000 subscribers, and brands loved working with our family because, we were a specific niche. We were Hispanics, and they wanted to target Hispanics. And the funny thing is, the same listener on a podcast and a viewer on YouTube and a view on TikTok, they're all different. And what we found was, man, YouTube viewers, they're really good. They're a lot better a lot of times than even Instagram and Facebook. And so I think YouTube is a powerful platform. As our good friend Sean, talks so much about this, and a great resource. But YouTube is the second biggest search engine next to Google, and I don't think Google's worried about it because they own them. And so people are looking, and the problem is most churches are titling their stuff, New Vintage Church, Sunday, 9/29/2020.
Yep.
And so start thinking in terms of, what are people searching for, and then posting that type of content. But man, I tell you, the engagement, the watch time, like we got more out of it with a smaller community than even our social media sites. So YouTube, and I love it all, but man, YouTube is an undertapped 100% like an undertapped resource for sure for churches.
And it's crazy because it's not new. Like it's been around for so long.
It has,
but it is still so undertapped. And I think that's one of the good things that's come out of the pandemic is if there's a platform I've seen churches adopt well during the season, it is YouTube.
It has.
And so that is exciting.
Think of your YouTube channel, like make it look like Netflix.
Yep.
Like if you go to Netflix and look at, like there's these thumbnails and different, like try to make your YouTube channel a little bit like Netflix. Yes, you have some sermons, but put a good thumbnail on there with a good title. Have some episodic type content. And again, we're not asking produce like Netflix. Like this does really, really well. Some of Carey Nieuwhof, our mutual friend Carey Nieuwhof, some of his best content, the video that has the most gone viral is an iPhone video. Over 500, 600,000 people have seen this video, and that's bigger than the town he lives in. And so don't worry so much about production value. As Sean says, content value is greater than production value. So just, as Sean says, just hit record and care. Here's the prerequisite. Care for people. And that's it. Like just show them how much you care. And when they see like the passion, like me right now, because I care about this stuff, they just like, man, that's actually someone in a church that I think I need to get connected to.
And if you don't care about people, you need a new vocation. You should not be a pastor.
Be a lawyer.
So go be a lawyer, accountant, or something like that. So Alejandro, we're moving into a unique season here, and I think we experienced Easter in a way this past year where it's like, okay, we've got to go online. We don't know what to do. Everybody was lost then. Now we've it's almost like we're getting back into a building, and different churches are going to have different systems, but at the end of the day, getting a mass audience to show up like we've done in the past of let's get 55,000 people to show up in the building in 10 services all packed in and overflow is probably not a reality. And so as we look at these hybrid models, what do you see that looking like, and how do you integrate your social strategy with this kind of new structure sitting in your seat today as an executive pastor?
Yeah, I think, Nils, we're not like Apple, we're more like HP, where the moment it gets shipped, it's obsolete. You and I are still, and this is the reason I love you, like we're still newbies, we're learners, and we're still learning this, and we're still figuring this out. So different churches have different phases. Like our church right now, our capacity, we don't have a big church, so we have a lot of services, just like your church in New York. So our, we are only allowed to add 25% people, and there's a constraint there. So a lot of churches, your church isn't alone. There's probably a lot of constraints that you have that are similar to a context like Nils and I may have.
Yep.
And so that I just go back to right now is a really good time, because we have a few weeks away for Christmas, is to really start posting that content out there and start advertising that content that I was talking about, the sermon stuff as well as the episodic type stuff. Boost stuff for $5, $10. If you're boosting, $20 a week, that's $80, $120 a month. It's not a lot. Like stop going to Starbucks a little bit, and you'll have the budget to do that. And then there's just this really simple invite, 3-step invite strategy that we use with churches. And it's really simple. And it's first thing is you got to hook them in 8 seconds. Then you got to tell them why they should come to your service. You got to give them the reason, actually. And then you got to have the CTA. It's your call to action. And it's really simple. It's like, hey, Pastor Alejandro here. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about our Christmas programs and why you're not going to miss out. And then I'd go into the benefits. So many churches are talking about it's going to be great because we have, a singer, stuff for kids. And it's just like, well, every church has that. So if you want people to connect with you in person, which I'm hoping we have more phases in different parts, they probably don't. But if you want them in person or online, you got to give them a reason why. And the reason why, you got to be thinking about this, and you got to do the work and put in the work. What makes your service unique from everyone else? And I'll tell you why churches need to think about this. I was consulting with a church in Seattle, and they have this big Easter thing, and I was doing some consulting with them, and they ended up telling me, man, I'm like, what's your unique thing? And they're like, it's going to be amazing worship. I'm like, okay, well, every other church is going to say that. It's going to be, we got a program for kids. Okay, great. Check. You should have that. Well, it's like, we have this, I don't know. We have this Easter egg, or this bunny that skydives onto and I'm like, guys, is there any other churches in Seattle have an Easter bunny sky? And they're like, no. I'm like, that's the thing that makes you unique. And so what you have to do is two things. One, either think what makes us unique and talk about that, or pastor, come up with something that separates you from everyone else, because we want people to show up. And so that's the thing I would probably do, is post a good content to build trust. And then with people that you've built trust with, show them a promotional invite video on Facebook, Instagram, and the other platforms, because that's the foundation. Because, Nils, we don't know if we're going to be inside fully. We don't know if we're 50% or 75%. We don't know if something is going to swing the other way, and which I don't think is going to happen. And no one's inside, so we just don't know. The one thing I do know is, Nils said, consistency and trust. And that's the thing that matters most, because if you do those two things, you are prepared and ready to promote anything.
So yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I love that 1, 2, 3. And I think that 3 is where I see a lot of churches miss the boat.
That's good.
They get to 1, 2, and 3, but that call to action is where, and this is what I learned as well. And probably too late when I was in the trenches, is being able to communicate with people with that call to action. And so what I see churches doing today with Facebook Live in particular is, hey, you like this piece of content, come back Sunday at 11. They've got to remember the website. They've got to remember your name. They've got to write it down on their calendar, because who's going to remember on Tuesday at 5 p.m., Sunday at 11 a.m.? And so this is where, I think I've seen, and we see this in the marketing world all the time. You don't sign up for a webinar, or I say sign up. Somebody doesn't say, come to my webinar. It's at this website at 5 p.m. They say, sign up and I'll send you the information. Exactly. Because I know you're not going to remember it. I'm going to make it easy for you not to remember it. And you see a restaurant. If you're physically going to go to a place, you go and put an RSVP in because they want to remind you and make sure you're going to show up. And if you just kind of, I'm going to hopefully show up at 5, or, they don't just tell you, come show up. They want you to RSVP, especially when it's a committed event. And so I think as we lead up to Easter, I would love to hear some of your best practices that you've seen along the way in that step 3 of some churches that have maybe really nailed that step.
Yeah, no, I think it's a couple things. Sometimes, one clear call to action, I think partially what Nils is saying is it's a paradox of choice. If you give too people too many options, indecision happens. And we want people to make a decision. We want them to take some sort of action. At times, we're just posting a video about an update and, or an encouraging word and a devotional. At the end of that, it's like, hey, check us out Sunday. You don't have to, after every video, check us out on Sunday at 10 o'clock on this website, go here, blah, blah, like 15 different call to actions. It could be as simple as like, hey, we'd love to know what you liked best about comment, but it could be comment below. And you could find, hey, comment below and let us know, what kind of content you want us to be creating. Another one is, right now is, click the link below to get registered. We don't talk about anything else, but it's click the link because we have to have people register in order to come in. And one thing I will say, best practice for Easter, we were doing Easter at a place where we rented. Our church is about 1,000. We got this place that was 2,500. It was really big. It was expensive for our church. And we were going all in, and we did some ads, and we had like 50,000 people that watched it, and then we had to cancel it. But what happened, what we did was, and this is in last year, Nils, I know, saw it. Were you even there, Nils? The Tesla, remember the Cybertruck? Were you there?
Yeah, I wasn't there. I mean, but I watched it.
You saw it, though,
yeah.
Yeah. So I thought you were there for some. You would go to those.
I'm a Tesla fan, yeah, for sure.
But it went viral. It went viral. They built so much anticipation that before they even created the Cybertruck, they had 200,000 of them sold. Year before that, the Model 3, I think it was, another 200,000.
And I got on, Alejandro, the first day the Model 3 was available. I did because I live in New York, and I just couldn't have a car.
Makes sense.
But I was like, I'm going to figure out by the time it's out to have a car. I got on the first day. I was number 350,000. I had to wait another 2 years before my name came up in the order.
Crazy.
And there was but they built a relationship. Elon Musk had built a relationship with me of trust that led to, when he said this, I put $1,000 down without knowing hardly anything about. I think I literally put it down the day before the announcement because they opened up blind registration, and it was like the trust was there.
Yeah, you need to get a Tesla. But then you look at like companies like Apple, very similar. The greatest companies in the world today, they know how to create demand for an interest and anticipation and excitement. Think of a great movie. You don't see Star Wars on Thursday for this weekend's release. Hey, check out Star Wars. I think Star Wars fans would they would do well, but they promote like a year in advance. And all that to say is like, don't just 2 to 3 weeks start, hey, we're so excited about Easter. Come check us out. Build a little bit of anticipation, hint at things, use a little bit of communication and psychology, if you will, to build a little bit of buzz and anticipation. Hey, we're excited to release, one of the first guests that we're going to have for our Easter program this year. Be on the lookout. Who's excited about Easter? Comment below. And then the next one's like, oh my gosh, you're not going to want it, and you're just hype. I'm like a hype man. I think in another life, I would have been like a hype man. I'm not the number one guy. Like, I'm always the hype man for someone else. Yeah. I could be your hype man, Nils. But I think anticipation creates excitement. It's a lot like popcorn. Popcorn, the first 0 to 1 minute, no pops. 1 to 2 minutes, couple pops, but 2 to 3, pop, 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 pop. And that's what happens when you don't just tell them what it is, but you kind of hint and you get excited and, hey, you guys are going to want to know who we have. Can you guess who our musical guest is? And use, all I'm saying is what got you to this place today is not going to help you get to where you want to be because the pandemic shifted so much. And so we have to think in innovative ways to repackage how we're doing things and experiment. That's the exciting things. Fail fast, fail often, fail forward, and you will start to see some fruit. Yep.
Did you see the David Blaine balloon takeoff thing?
Watched it with my kids.
I think it was the perfect lead up.
Oh, it was amazing.
All the things, and then it was kind of like, then you want to watch this live event. I mean, I think if there's a model for the church,
they were hints. Yeah, they were, and watch, you know, Apple, like pay attention to how Apple does it. Like they do this event and then like, what are they going to release? And they start leaking stuff. And again, and people just wait outside still. Like this is Apple 12 or iPhone 12 and people still in their what is it called? When they camp out.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But
the sleeping bags still outside the night before waiting in line. And why? Because, and shouldn't Jesus be that? Shouldn't we be so excited? Shouldn't we get people so excited to want to have that same effort and yearning as the woman with the issue? Like she just had to have it. And we have the greatest story, better than Tesla and Elon and Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. Like we have the greatest story. And so if we got to think, it's just not going to, just presenting it like that way, it just doesn't. You have to present it in a very strategic way because of people just have a bad taste a lot of times for churches. So if your mission is your community in your city, I know a lot of churches are very internal focused, and that's fine. A Bible church, that's totally fine. But if you're outward focused, you have to think of creative ways to communicate the gospel. And you could do that with sermons, episodic content, helping in your community. We're helping a local elementary, and that's the gospel. Like we're giving kids in need clothes. They went shopping, and like that's stuff we're posting, and people love that stuff. And so we got to figure out different ways to communicate the gospel so that when we have a big event, people are just excited about it, and they're excited because of all the good stuff that we're doing in our community. So.
Man, that's so good. You got me fired up about. I'm ready for Christmas. I'm ready to see what creative ideas church leaders dig into this season. I think one of the things that we have seen is that there are some churches that have kind of had the mindset we're going to wait this out, and they're probably not around anymore. To be honest, or they won't be back. And there's some that leaned in during the season, and those churches are thriving today, which is crazy to think about. And you mentioned Bayside as a great example of that. And I think it's small and large churches that have seen incredible success during the season. And I think Christmas is not something of like, oh, we've got to just, we're just going to throw in the towel this year, and next year we're going to come back and do it. This is a time to lean in. And I think you can have the biggest Christmas you've ever had. You can have the biggest Easter we don't know what Easter is going to look like, but regardless, this can be the biggest Easter your church has ever had. And you could start planning that today and start planting those seeds today. Alejandro, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for stirring these ideas in church leaders. How can people connect with you online?
Man, best way, I love Instagram and Facebook. They're both at Alejandro Reyes. And if you have any questions or you have creative ideas that you want to, just send them to me. And I'd love to hey, I think this is great. Or, and if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out.
All right, man. I love you. Thanks for taking the time to be on here. Socialmedia.church for show notes. Go leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is you're listening. We'll talk to you again on the next episode.